Yeah. 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 My biggest surprise, honestly, was because I tend to write very fast because I want to get it on that page. I want to get on that page. Or the run-on sentences with the dialogue. Because there is nothing worse than reading a book and you can't separate one conversation from the next. So what do most people do? If it's all jumbled up on the page and they're reading it, they're just throwing it to the side, picking up another book that they can follow easily, because people read to follow it easier and to get to the next book. And just, I read that was great, let's go to the next book. Well, if you're constantly having to figure out a conversation in your head because it's written wrong off the page, then you're not going to finish that book. And because I don't really type fast, but I write fast because I want to get it on there. I miss breaking up the dialogue and having that conversation. And, one person can be talking and it's run on into the next person talking, and I miss that. And when you get that manuscript back and there's red marks all over the page, that's very frustrating, but it needs to be done. It needs to be done. No, that's very frustrating.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. Happy to have another author on, referred to us here at Living the Next Chapter from another podcast, which is great. Yay. And I'm so excited. Thank you, Diane, for making us connect together. I love this. This is great. JR is with us today. We're going to be talking about her journey as an author. If you are ready to fall in love with a great book, right? JR is here to talk about her romance novels and all the great stuff she does. Historical, paranormal romance. Okay, So if that's not a great combo, I don't know what is. JR, welcome to Living the Next Chapter.
Thank you.
It's exciting to have you here. Great. Historical, paranormal romance. What a nice combo. That's an interesting genre for sure. Where are you in this big world of ours? Let's start there.
I am in Jacksonville, Florida. Yes.
The best part of Florida, right? Is that the best part?
No.
Oh. Okay. That's honest.
No, it is not. But, it's I'm actually in a very small part of Jacksonville called Fleming Island. It's actually just a lovely little town here. So I'm not like in all the big city part. So it's actually really nice here. So
excellent. I love it. Let's start with your author journey, JR. Where did all this start for you? Like, I like to ask this question at the beginning because there was a point in time when being an author was not even kind of like in the cards for you, wasn't top of mind, wasn't something that you did on a regular basis. And now here you are with multiple books. Something happened. So can you take us back to what happened? How did you go from a non-author lifestyle to today? What happened?
It's been almost 10 years ago. I was living in Gainesville and I was just a housewife and a mom to beautiful children. And my kids were at school all day. And I found myself with nothing to do. And I'd always kind of dabbled in writing like poetry and stuff like that. But, being a mom, it's very time consuming. But then once they start school, it's like, what do you do? It's just to fill your time. So I was finding myself doing different things. And then I went to the movies one day and watched a movie, and I just came home and decided that, I can do that. So I came home and I sat down at my computer and decided just to give it a shot, just see where it went. And it started out just a hobby. It was just a hobby. I didn't plan on taking it anywhere, just a way to fill my time. And then my husband talked me into submitting it, and it just kind of took off from there. And I had actually written my first book. I had to split it into 2 books because it was too long. So that's how my second book came out. And now I'm hooked. This is my passion.
You're all in. Now you're being very humble there, because when we first talked, you left that movie and you're like, not only can I do this, but I can do better. than this was your comment. And I want to include that because
Okay.
that's a good motivation right there. You're like, okay, that was nice, but oh my gosh, I could do way better than that. I've got great ideas,
I did.
right?
I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. I did. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was, but I just kept thinking to myself,
Really?
really? Like, I just think that I can write better than that. And not knowing if I could or not, I didn't know. But I went home, and then that's probably why it took me so long, is because I think you have to focus on what you're writing. And just, if you want your readers to read it, make it good. And I just didn't think and that movie was based on books. I understand that, but it just didn't feel like the writing. I even, it wasn't just me, it was other people just kind of looking like what? I just felt like I could do better than that. So why not just give it a try and see if I actually could? And it's, as all authors know, it is an ongoing journey, but I don't know if I can actually write better than that. I feel like I can, but I'm sure every author does. So that's how that started.
So the early days of writing, then you come home, you start writing. Was it like a download happening where you're just like writing as fast as you can think? Or was it more like herding cats, trying to get all these ideas and put them together into something that looks like a book?
It actually was very, very easy for me. I had so many ideas in my head of what my first book was going to be about. And I knew where I wanted the setting to be. And we've spoken about this. I knew where I wanted it to be. I knew where I wanted there to be, who I wanted there to be from. But I didn't know exactly the storyline that I wanted. And then all of a sudden, it just started coming out. And I actually had to buy a mini tape recorder because I would just wake up in the middle of the night and, or you're out someplace and you have nothing to write it down, or you're typing in your phone, or, so that was the easy part for me, is just the ideas. And I just had to pick the one that I wanted to start with. The first story that I wanted to start with. And then it just started becoming a series. And then I couldn't write them fast enough. Because once you get it in your head, you don't want to lose that, So,
right.
So,
yeah, that's my problem for podcasts. I wake up and I have the name of the show. I have all the information about the show. I know everything about the podcast that I want to create. And I go to the internet, I look, and the domain's available, which is like, how is that possible? And I'm like, but the only thing I find frustrating in that is that it feels like I was given something to do, like a job, but I have no say in it. Kind of like I woke up, here's the idea, go do it. And I'm like, can I have some input in this? Because I just feel like I've been given something to do, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, it's very frustrating. Like, I think you have to work through it in your head and just kind of get it from your head to that paper or on your computer, but that's the struggle is, what do I have to say? And am I going to be able to say it?
I love it. So the romance novel industry is huge. There's new books every 5 seconds. So your books, you found an area where you felt you could do really well. And now let's break down the historical, paranormal, romance. We got to talk about that. How come you settled on that? What part of historical, paranormal, and romance, how do these three words connect together for you?
Well, I always knew I wanted to write romance. That was my genre. Because that's what I read. That's what I grew up reading. That's what that's just my preference for reading material. So I had to start there, but it was, what kind of romance novel do I want to write? Do I want to write the everyday, that everybody has read? Everybody's read this. It's been done so many times. So I had to think about that. And then I've always loved the paranormal, just anything different, anything that kind of makes you think, is this actually possible? Could this actually be possible? Or, even if people don't think it's possible, it's still fascinating. Like, wouldn't that be amazing if that actually happens? So that was my next step. And then the historical, I've always been a history buff. I've always loved history, but how do you incorporate that into romance? That was kind of difficult for me. And then as cheesy as it sounds, I literally woke up from a dream and I couldn't wait to write it down. And it just kind of came from there. And it was like 3:00 in the morning. I'm just at my computer just typing because I couldn't wait to get it down, just to incorporate all three of those together. And then once I put the Scottish aspect into it, it just started writing itself. It was fairly easy because there's so much Scottish history and there's so much to work with, and just the fascination of everything there. It was just, that was my goal, is just get as much of that Scottish history into the romance novels that I could. And I was amazed how easy it was once I started doing my research of just taking a certain area of Scottish history and just running with it.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
As a descendant from Scotland, I'm very excited because when we chatted originally, our pre-chat, we both realized that we both love Scotland, which is great. What is it about Scotland specifically? You could have picked anything, Ireland, the UK. There's something about Scotland. What is it about that part of the world that just keeps you focused to come back there all the time?
Anything I can see on Scotland, from as far back as I can remember, it just fascinated me. The history there, the people there. I have several friends that, I have a couple friends that they're from Scotland, and I love talking to them because they're so into their history. They're just, I could listen to them for hours because they're so proud of where they come from, as they should be. And just, they're fascinated with themselves from where they're from. And that to me is just mesmerizing. And then you start digging deeper into the Scottish history and the culture and just the lifestyle there. And I used to tell people that it was because it's such a simple lifestyle, but it's really not. It's really not. Like, the word simple doesn't describe it. It's just very, my husband calls it humbling. It's very humbling, a lifestyle, the way they live and their culture. And, they're such a kind culture to me. And just,
some of us weren't so kind. Some of us weren't so kind. Yeah. Yeah.
The people that I know.
Yeah.
You ask them anything and they'll tell you.
Yeah.
They'll tell you without being, arrogant, or just, you ask them, like, I want to know a certain part about this part of history. And they're, let's sit down and have a drink and talk about it. And I could listen to that for hours. And the more you listen to it, the more fascinated you become. And it's a very romantic culture to me.
Yeah.
It's a little brutal sometimes, but I choose to take that part out of it. But I don't remember ever not being fascinated with just the Scottish culture.
So for anyone who loves the series Outlander, that's got elements of what you write about. Would that be something that's kind of similar vein? If somebody's trying to get a picture of what your books would be about, is it kind of a little bit of that?
A little bit.
Okay.
Because it does, both of my books, well, the first book especially, does deal with a little bit of, I wouldn't call it really time travel.
Yeah.
It's more of reincarnation, finding out where your actual history is. A lot of, I want to say, like, a lot of dreamscapes in the first book, because it's basically based on a woman who finds that she has been reincarnated, centuries later. And she doesn't really know a whole lot about the Scottish culture. So she's kind of finding out a lot of this stuff. So I would say there's a little bit of Outlander influence in there. I did start writing before I found Outlander, and I was thrilled to find that when when my husband pointed out that he had a new show for me to watch. I had no idea what it was. Didn't know. But you can probably see some influence in there, especially the second book. Just the way they talk, the way they speak, some of the mannerisms you can kind of pick up even while reading the book. I didn't want to make it too. It's a romance novel, but I didn't want to make it too cheesy romance.
Yeah.
I've read those for so many years. I just kind of wanted to steer away from that.
Yeah.
But I did think about putting the stones in there, but I think the stones in Outlander are just too historic for me. So I didn't really want to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how they frame that show and how they do the writing for that show. It's great. And they do bring in real historical elements and real characters. I mentioned to you, part of one episode, the Campbell family was represented. And I'm like, oh, that's exactly my relatives, distant relatives.
Yeah.
Again, not the nicest people. I'm sorry, everyone, but especially to the McDonald family. My apologies, because we weren't the nicest back in the day. But yeah, it's amazing when you can have real context to a story, right? Even if it's like fiction and you're kind of building a world, but then to bring in real world elements that kind of ground the story in reality, I think that makes everything seem so much more realistic and more engaging. I love that when authors can do that. Any secret tricks that you use or have developed as you write that make your books as realistic as possible?
As realistic as possible. I would say probably the biggest thing I use is my put some humor in it. I always try to look for the humor when I'm reading a book, no matter what I'm reading, whether it's romance or whatever I'm reading. I've had several people mention to me that the reason why, especially the first book, the reason why it stands out is because they can them knowing me, they can see my sense of humor in it. And I didn't even realize that I was doing that, but I'll hear something and I'll think, oh, that would be a perfect line for a book. So I'll just throw it in the book, and when they're talking to me in my groups and stuff, they're just like, I totally see you in that conversation. So that's my trick, is just write like you're having a conversation. Don't write. So that's the biggest tip I can give anybody is just don't write like you're writing for everybody else. Write like you're having a conversation with someone in front of you.
Good.
And it'll just flow. That's my thing is just, my tip is just have it flow just as smoothly as you.
So part of our audience for Living the Next Chapter is authors, and they're coming to the episode looking for inspiration as they write their books. Was there any tools or anything that you used early on to kind of help shape your journey as an author, or did you just kind of just learn as you go?
Most of it is learn as I go. Okay. I have some favorite authors that I do kind of, I think because I admire them so much, I think one of the biggest problems these days is everybody's trying to copy everybody else. And it's just, it's very discouraging to me. So I kind of reread. Those are the tools that I read. I use my books as my tools. Go back and reread these, mark your chapters of this is the way I want to write. But, by all means, don't write exactly like them, because there's so many authors out there that you can tell. You can tell. They've just completely written a book and they've just put their name on it, but it's somebody else's book. You can see that.
Yeah.
But I think that's my biggest tool, is just keeping it fresh in your head. Read everything that you can, everything that interests you. Just and learn from it. That's the huge tool with me, is learn from what you're reading and use it in your work as well. Maybe in a different way.
Yeah.
But just read everything. And I think that's the biggest thing these days, is everybody's so quick. Let's just watch it on TV or on my computer or on my phone, but just pick up a book and read it. It's so different. It's such a different experience, and it just stays with you. And that's my biggest tool for me.
Is there any danger from your point of view for an author to become too overly influenced by another author or a TV show or a movie to the point where you lose your identity as an author?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've seen it so much. And this is probably why, because you see authors that they're just cranking out like 10 books a year. It's just, I personally cannot do that. That's just my way of writing. I can't do that. But you see it so much, and it's because they're just writing from somebody else's perspective because they've been so influenced by that author and the things that they write and the stories that they write that, I want to be that person. Well, that's fine, but you're your singular person. You're not that author. And to me, it's almost insulting it's flattering to a point, but if you're reading enough, you can see it's been done so much. People are just, there's no originality anymore. Yeah. And all these authors are, they're writing these books and they're just not, there's nothing original about them. And it can be, it's difficult to do sometimes, but you have to just sit and think that may be your favorite author. And it's okay. That's fine. I have many authors that I would love to be able to write like them, and they've influenced me tremendously. But you have to catch yourself when you're writing that way. Just maybe if you've written a block and you kind of have to reread it and go, that's not really my style, or maybe I just maybe need to rethink that. Because it's just all over the place now.
So earlier you mentioned something along the lines of your group or your community giving you feedback. Who is this group, and how did you find them, and how did they find you?
The biggest groups that I belong to, I have like several. Oh my gosh, I belong to so many book groups, but my biggest book groups are on my Facebook page and my Instagram. And it started out very, very slow. Because I was, for the longest time, a very lazy author. I didn't want to do the work. But you have to, social media is such a big part of your marketing now these days. So join those groups. And I was scared to join those groups because, nobody wants to think that, writing is a very isolating job. And getting to know those people, just reach out to those people, or when they reach out to you, join their groups, join as many groups as you can. And that's been my biggest one, is my Facebook. I went from just like a few followers to, I don't know how many I have now. I never check those, but I've started making friends on Facebook, and you get tips and tricks from them, and just, they invite you to their groups, and then you meet the other people in their groups. And the next thing you know, you're being invited to their book events and just maybe not as an attending author, but just to meet these people. Yeah. And then, I live on a very small island here in Jacksonville, but I started going to my library and joining book groups. And, you observe for a while. And then all of a sudden people are asking you about you. What do you write? What do you do? And it's a very slow process. But Facebook has been amazing to me. I've met the most amazing people on there that are so encouraging. There was a time not too long ago that I was just so discouraged with my writing that I was just going to stop. And then I think destiny just brought this woman to me, and a couple times now, and they encourage you. So not only is it marketing, but you're making some amazing friends in these groups that you have something in common with, and they'll ask you to do readings on their podcasts and their groups that they belong to. And it is very scary, but it's so much fun. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
But I've met some amazing people on Facebook, and I talk with them every day. And we encourage each other.
Yeah.
And that's been the best part, just being there for each other.
It's awesome. So they might be listening to our episode, your friends on Facebook. Any special messages directed just to them as they listen to you on the show? Come on.
Diane, of course, she was amazing.
Yeah.
I'm not used to this at all, interacting with people live or anything. And me and her only did a short video podcast, but she put me at ease, and we don't really know each other that well. but she's just one of the sweetest people I've ever met.
Yeah, right.
My friend Josephine Wrightson on Facebook, she's amazing. She lives in the UK, so me and her kind of banter back and forth. I love her to death. My two Beth Wardzel and Beth Hildenbrand on Facebook, and CJ Lopez. They have been just wonderful to me. CJ is actually the person that I think she was the first person to review my book when I was packing up my stuff and ready to pack up my computer. And I read her review and I was ugly crying. It was amazing. So those have been just amazing people to me. And, to me at this point in my life, I was shocked, but so grateful for these people. It's every day. Just they message me just to check on me. How you doing? What'd you write today? And as a writer, that's what you need.
Yeah. I love it. I love when guests do that and they mention people by name. And I know there's many, many more people.
Oh, there's so
that, yeah, but it's nice in the moment who's top of mind right now. And, to be able to do that and say thank you. I don't think a lot of people realize how much their words and encouragement mean to an author.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you're having just a day where you just cannot get in front of your computer because you're just having one, everybody has those days. And then a message pops up on your Facebook Messenger. Hey, honey, how you doing? What'd you write today? It's okay. It's okay that you didn't write today. That's fine.
Yeah.
It just start back tomorrow. That little bit of encouragement, people don't realize it's just, it goes a long way. It really does.
Yeah. So let's switch gears and talk to the reader that's going to walk up to your table for a signing in the future.
Oh.
They have a copy of your book in their hand. It's the first time they get to meet their favorite author. So you talk about the people that you find that feed you, but you also feed others. So there's people who have the same opinion of you, where they're like, I can't believe I get to hear you on this podcast. I've been reading your books. I love what you do. I feel nervous walking up to your table to talk to you because I have this impression of who you are as an author. How would you put someone at ease, and what would you say to a reader who's been following your journey? They have all your books. They're going to buy the next one and the next one. What kind of message would you have for a reader that's coming and listening to you on the show today?
Just enjoy. That's what I always, because that's how I am. Just, we all read, well, most of us read to a point to escape something. Just even if it's just for 10 minutes, just to get out of your head, just escape a bad part of your day, just to relax, have a me day. My biggest thing I always tell, and I haven't had a lot of them, but just whenever people ask me a question like that, I always say, I want my books to be something you can just open up and just enjoy and just escape for that few minutes, just to a place that, of course, we're never going to be in a Scottish castle somewhere, but for that 10 minutes, half an hour a day, you're just like, it puts you in that mindset and just enjoy just one chapter at a time. And if you like the book, of course, that's wonderful, but just enjoy yourself. Just read it like you're talking to a friend, like you're just sitting there having a conversation with a friend. Yeah. And don't worry about, like, am I going to have to give this person a review or something like that? Just enjoy it. And I want people to enjoy my books as much as I enjoy writing them.
Yeah.
Is my big thing.
Talk a little bit about the characters in the books. Are each of the books stand alone, or does it one kind of common character theme all the way through all the different books? Kind of give us some idea of how all these books line up with each other.
I wouldn't recommend standalone, because I just from my own point of view, I don't think people would understand it. And they're not complicated books, obviously, but if you haven't read the first book, you won't understand the second book. You won't understand the characters, because they do segue into the next book. And
Good.
for the most part into the third and fourth book as well, even though it's a different series. But because it does jump, the first book does jump from the 17th century to the 21st century. I think people would probably get lost, and they'd have to, and there's nothing worse than reading a book and having to go back and reread something to, nobody's going to do that.
Context. Yeah.
So yeah, I think you would have to read it in the series sequence, just for the characters alone to understand who they are.
Yeah. It's amazing. So, as far as your characters, are they historical characters? Are they actual people? Or have you created these people? Is there any historical facts about them in particular that are actually true?
No.
Okay.
No, they're all, they're fictional people, but I've based them on facts about people that I know.
Okay.
But they're not, because I've had these people that I know, they've actually called me and said, "Is it about me?" Like, no, but I did use some of your traits.
Yeah.
So they're completely fictional. I've had a lot of feedback on the characters, different feedback, all good, thankfully. But they're people that I thought of in my head that I thought would be very interesting characters, very strong-willed characters, which I do kind of tend to do that. So yeah, I wouldn't say they were people, no.
Yeah. Any comments come back to you from readers and people in your world, and you're like, wow, I never even thought of that, or that's completely different than what was in my head when I wrote it. Because as a musician, I write music, and I write about a certain thing, and then somebody walks up to me and goes, "I love the song where you talked about the other thing," and I'm like, I wasn't even thinking about the other thing. I'm writing it about this thing. But to the listener, they have their own interpretation of what I'm talking about. Yeah. And I have no concept of what because they're in a different headspace than I am.
Yeah.
So, right, is any feedback come back to you and you're like, what? Wow. Okay, that's cool.
I have had, we did a readers group about that when I first started, when the first book came out. And you asked for honest feedback, and you have to be prepared to get that honest feedback. I try not to take it personally, but your books are your babies. So these characters become a part of you, but it's all been really good feedback. As the female character, I've had several people say we didn't expect her to be so strong-willed. For the 17th century, women just a lot of times were not very independent. They weren't very, it tended to be a little bit needy sometimes. And I didn't want that character to be like that. But I also wanted her to be very feminine, because it was a very feminine time back then. Women were very feminine, but I wanted her to have her own voice. And that came, apparently, I didn't realize when I was writing it that way, but apparently that came off very, very clear, which I'm very happy about. People picked up on it right away. The male character, they said, they in the first book, and he's also, they're both in the second book as well. Very strong-willed, but not arrogant, because I don't like to write about arrogant men. It's just not something that I'm comfortable doing. But he's romantic, but he's strong. I try not to make him too overly masculine, because I think that's a turn off sometimes when people are reading. You don't want that kind of overbearing character. So thankfully, hopefully, the next book will be the same way, because it's a completely different series. But this series, I've got a lot of really good feedback about the characters. Which makes me very happy, because you never know how it's going to go.
Yeah. I like it. One thing we talked about as well was back to the writing side, you talked about the value of a good editor as far as in your process of writing. And you have a background in this as well.
I do.
So let's talk a little bit about what makes a great editor, and how do you find one?
Finding a good editor is extremely difficult. And that was the biggest lesson that I learned when I first started writing, because everybody thinks they can edit. And I was the same way when I first started editing. I mean, that's just being completely honest. If you have a computer program, you can do anything, but it's not about that. It's not all about that. You have to find an accredited editor. You are going to pay probably a little bit more money unless you're friends with somebody who does it. But you have to think of what are you willing to invest? And where are you if you can? Are you at a point that you can invest in a certain type of editor? Because there's different kinds of editors, obviously. But it's so important. Before I published the first book, I was completely ready to publish it, and I just happened to run it by an editor friend of mine, and she didn't get past the first 2 chapters, and I was stunned because I have a background in editing, so I was like, "Oh, that can't be right." And she made the comment that's my mantra: is you need that extra set of eyes. You're just too close to your work. You're going to miss things that you never thought you would have missed. Everybody thinks their manuscript is perfect. But you're always going to miss something. You need that extra set of eyes before you publish. Even whether you're an indie publisher or traditional, it doesn't matter, because she caught things that I would never have seen ever. And it's just, if you're going to invest in the one thing in your writing, it's get a good editor. But finding one is very hard to do. I had someone tell me one time, it's as hard to find a good editor as it is to find someone to publish your book. And I truly believe that. I do. Because the market is so saturated right now with editing and formatting, and everybody's doing it because you can just download a program for it. So everybody thinks they can do it. But, I do use a program for it, but I also read the work. You have to physically read the work, not just on your computer, but you have it edited, have it re-edited, have it proofread after you do all that stuff, because once it's out there, people see it. They're seeing all those mistakes. That's your name on that book. And they're not going to pick up your next book. Because they're looking at this book thing. Yeah, the writing may be good, but I can't follow it because there's so many mistakes. So just find a really, really good editor. And that's another place that I have found. That's where I found my editor, was Facebook. She reached out to me on Facebook from a Facebook group.
Really?
And I was following her Instagram, didn't even know she was an editor, because she was so booked up. She didn't advertise anymore. And I'm very, very lucky to have found her. She's amazing. But there's groups on Facebook, Instagram, Book Club, Goodreads, and just do the research. Find somebody really good, and don't take the first one. That's another piece of that. Don't take the first editor that reaches out to you. Just shop around. It's okay to shop around. That's okay.
Yeah. It's kind of like hiring a plumber, where if you call somebody and they're like, "Yeah, I can be there in 5 minutes," you're like, "Why? Are you not working?" Because I called the other one, and they're booked out for 2 months. There's a reason why they're booked out for 2 months, right? Yeah.
If you have to wait a little bit, that's fine. Get started on your next book. They'll get back to you. But just because you're anxious, and I was the same way, just because you're anxious to get that book published doesn't mean that you can skip over the necessities to get it published. Because, everybody can publish on Amazon, but it doesn't necessarily mean your book's ready to be published on Amazon. And I had to redo my first book. I had to take it off and re-edit it and put it back on. And wow. I'm very glad I did. And I'm still finding mistakes on it. But it's a learning process for me. And it's going to cost you a little bit of money, but a lot of it you can do yourself. Download that program, do it yourself before you send it to an editor, and then get that extra set of eyes and then re-edit it again.
What's something that surprised you when it came back in the edits about your writing that you maybe were a little blind to, or it didn't really catch you in the moment, that when you saw it from the editor, you're like, "Oh, you're right. I get it. I understand." Because that's going to make you a better writer for the next book, right? Yeah.
My biggest surprise, honestly, was because I tend to write very fast because I want to get it on that page. Or the run-on sentences with the dialogue. Because there's nothing worse than reading a book and you can't separate one conversation from the next. So what do most people do? If it's all jumbled up on the page and they're reading it, they're just throwing it to the side, picking up another book that they can follow easily, because people read to follow it easier and to get to the next book and just, I read that. That was great. Let's go to the next book. Well, if you're constantly having to figure out a conversation in your head because it's written wrong off the page, then you're not going to finish that book. And because I don't really type fast, but I write fast because I want to get it on there. I miss breaking up the dialogue and having that conversation. And, one person can be talking and it's run on into the next person talking. And I miss that. And when you get that manuscript back and there's red marks all over the page, that's very frustrating, but it needs to be done. It needs to be done. No, that's very frustrating.
Excellent. Well, see, that's kind of why I'm so excited to have you on, because you have two different perspectives as an editor, helping authors, but then as an author yourself, you're seeing the whole picture of the process, which is great. And I think that gives you insight that some other people might not have if they only do one of the two. Yeah. So I think that's kind of unique that you can approach it from both sides, and that you're willing to be edited. Again, you could say, I don't need it. I'm an editor. I don't need any help. I'm good. But we're still humans at the end of the day.
We're still, we're always going to miss something. We're always and that's what every author that I've ever talked to has ever said. You're too close to your work. You can't process it. Honestly, I guess is the best word to say, because you're just too close to it. Everybody thinks their work is gold, and that's fine. But 9 times out of 10, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's that whole thing about you can't see the forest because of the trees, right? That kind of thing. Right?
Yeah.
I get it. Okay, so before we go, I got one more question here at the end. You've been very gracious. We've gone longer than I expected. This is awesome. Before I ask my last question for you, JR, as far as contact information, people are interested. They have an editing question. They'd love to just bounce off of you. They're looking for an editor that you might be able to recommend above yourself, which is great as well. They're looking for more information about your book. They have a book club, and they're looking for somebody to come in and host and be a guest on a book club, whatever. Mm-hmm. How do we get in touch with you so that we can continue the conversation after this podcast?
Well, I'm all over Facebook. I've been on them for years. I'm very easy to find on Facebook. It's just JR Byers on Facebook. I do have Instagram. It's just JR Byers 52 on Instagram. I don't have Twitter anymore. I did get rid of that. But you can also, they can reach me at justmejb47 at AOL.com. Yes, I still have my AOL. I love my AOL.
You've got mail.
I've got mail. Yes. I'm familiar with it. I love it. I don't have to struggle with it. I love it. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. So I tell people, just, if you have a question about anything, even if you just want to just email me and say, I'm struggling, can you contact me? That's fine. Just email me. I have no problem answering questions, but that's the easiest way to get a hold of me is my email and my Facebook. And my Facebook is public. So anybody can message me on Facebook. That's probably the easiest way to find me.
Okay.
And then
your Facebook group as well, is that open? Can we get in there?
It's on my Facebook.
Okay.
I'm a member of many, many groups on Facebook. So when you go to my page on Facebook, you'll see all the groups. Some of them aren't for everybody. Yeah. And I belong to some of them that I don't necessarily follow that closely because I'm really not into those kind of groups. But, I'll chime in every once in a while. But everything is on my page.
Excellent. Okay, so last question as we leave. I'd like to know this from you. We do all this great work. We put everything out in the world. We're hoping that it connects with people. We want people to resonate with what we do and to be a great connection between us and our community. If everyone was in a room with you and you left the room for a few minutes and you're out of there, you can't hear what they're saying about you. What are you hoping as an author that your community would say about you and your writings and what you do? What would your hope be that they would say about you if you're not in the room?
That she was interesting. That she would be with somebody that I would want to talk to, that I could have a conversation with. Because I think I don't want to say people feed off of each other, but I think people, when you're engaging with each other, you can learn so much from the people that you talk to. And it doesn't have to be a big group of people. It can be just a small group of 3 or 4 people, just that I was interesting to talk to. Not looking to teach anybody anything, but just, that she was interesting to talk to. And now I want to go read her book because let's find out a little bit more about Janet. Let's find out a little bit more about, I found her interesting. So yeah, now I want to go read her book.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I can tell you've done that here on the podcast. So congratulations. Well done. Interesting person. We want to go get your books. We want to support you. And it's great to have you on because I'm sure there's people listening to this that got a lot of great value by having you here on the show. So well done. Well done. You're a great guest. Do many, many more of these because you did awesome. And we'll send people your way. And I would love to say, as you write into the future, keep me in mind. I'd love for you to come back and give us an update down the road on new projects and come back and give us an update. Would you commit to that?
Absolutely.
Sweet.
Absolutely.
That's even better. And then you and I someday will meet in Scotland, stand at a castle, and go, there it is. We've arrived. It is. Right?
Oh, that would be amazing.
I'll show you around one of my castles, which I've never been at. But yeah, we'll go and do that. Together. Okay? All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, JR. All the information, everyone, is in the show notes. As always, go there, click all the links, do all the things. When you buy JR's books, leave an outstanding review of a great book so that everybody knows there's a new book to fall in love with. Follow the journey, be a part of the community, take JR up on her offer, reach out and ask your questions and connect. It's a great person to talk to. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Hey, well, thank you for listening. It's a new year, and we're excited to be releasing even more great episodes of Living the Next Chapter. And we want you to come along for the journey. Thank you for being here. If you know of an author that you would love to have featured on the podcast, an author that you enjoy, an author that brings you that excitement, that you would just love to hear them interviewed on this podcast, I would love to hear your suggestion for a future guest. And what would be a question or two that you would want us to ask them on your behalf? Go to livinginthenextchapter.com. There's a little speak pipe icon there. You can leave me a voice message. Tell me who should be on the show and give me some question ideas. And I'll use your request and reach out to that author and invite them on and give you full credit for the idea. livingthenextchapter.com. Would love to hear your suggestion. And thank you for listening. Catch you on the next episode.
Hey there, fellow parent. If you're anything like me, balancing screen time for our kids is a constant struggle. That's why I want to share a little secret with you, KidsPod. It's this amazing app I found that's packed with podcasts just for kids. Imagine stories, learning, and fun, all without the screen. It's been a game changer in our house, keeping my kids engaged and their imaginations running wild. And guess what? It's completely free. So download KidsPod today. Trust me, it's a decision you won't regret.